Y'all ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. Welcome everyone to the first, and hopefully one of many, Ask Us Anything questions. So we were just absolutely blown away by how many questions you guys submitted. So thank you very much for that. And made us think a little bit, which is
Ooh, yeah.
kind of nice.
We have some interesting questions here.
Yeah. So there are so many questions that what I'm going to try to do is put links down in the description below, hopefully to various times throughout the video, so on various topics and everything. So if you have something in particular that you're interested in, you can look down below, hopefully get a link and go check that out. But if you watch the whole thing, hopefully get a little bit out of it. So
yeah,
we're going to start off with the question we get most often. You know what it is.
Money, 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 money.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so what did we do for work that allows us to sail all over the world? A lot of people are nice about it, and they say they love our boat, and I think that's really cool, because we love our boat too.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about this in other videos a little bit, and we've talked about it on our blog, so this is going to be the full story. So...
So one thing we just need to get out of the way is both Amy and I were born incredibly fortunate. Like, our families are fairly well off. We've had very fortunate upbringings, education, everything. So we've been incredibly fortunate in that respect. When we met, we kind of knew we both bonded over travel. We knew we wanted to go out and do some traveling someday. So from the beginning of our marriage, we started saving like immediately, almost up to 70% of our income. And when we met, I was working in finance for Shell Oil, negotiating commercial contracts. So it was a pretty lucrative career. I did pretty well, but yeah, that was kind of my side of the story.
Yeah. I had a degree in engineering, and when David and I met, it's important to note that although we both had college degrees, neither of us had any debt. So we were both very good. I think our parents, big credit to our parents, both sets of parents raised us really financially smart. So we were paying off our credit card in full every month, and we were living well below our means. And I think that's really been a great foundation for us. So thank you, parents. So then fast forward to when my dad passed away. My dad owned a dinner cruise business in the Houston area. My grandfather owned a boat business before that, and that's part of our sailing history, was my family's kind of always been in boats, and David never sailed before he met me, as an adult anyways.
I blame this one.
It's all my fault. So my dad died very quickly. Although I had a degree in engineering, I was involved in the business since I was like yay high. I used to get paid like $20 to wash dishes, and I loved it. So at the time it was, I have to buy the business, I want to keep it running, and that's really important to me. David was very supportive of that, even though it meant that he had to start commuting an hour each way to work, which was terrible. I just had to commute down the stairs, which was awesome. So I bought the business, I bought the land, I took out loans to do both those things, so we went into debt, and once again, David was very supportive about that. And I really enjoyed running the business. It was tough. Like, it was very good that David had a constant, steady income, good income. But my job did allow us to keep our living expenses pretty low. I traveled for work, and I basically owned a restaurant. So I got food at wholesale prices, which the company paid for. And, I took my employees out to dinners, and so we ate out more than we probably would have otherwise. So anyways, that enabled us to save about 68% of our income in our best years. So then we started thinking, okay, I would like to sell a business. This is me thinking my engineering degree is not getting put to good use, and I've run the business long enough. So we put it up for sale, and we put a down payment on a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we've said in the past, we've alluded to, we've been incredibly fortunate. That all worked out quite well for us. When the business sold, that helped finance the boat. And then when the land sold about a little over a year ago, I think, that has helped just continue financing the rest of the trip for us. So, we're incredibly fortunate that the whole trip is planned out and financed for us, but there you go. That's kind of the basics of how we ended up in this place with the boat that we have. So,
yes.
If people continue asking this, we're going to point you right back to the video.
If you're interested in more research about a lot of the principles that we believe in financially, I'd like to recommend that you Google FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early. There's a lot of great blogs and communication and conversation around those kind of principles. Look at Mr. Money Mustache and look at Choose Financial Independence or Choose FI. So educate yourself on how to save money and go cruise the world.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. The next question we get asked about a lot is monthly expenses. So what do we have budgeted? What do we spend on? Those categories, all that kind of stuff. And even though I have the finance background, the truth is we've kind of swapped roles a little bit on this one. So I end up doing most of the maintenance on the boat, the engineering work, and Amy has been really good about tracking all the budget stuff. So I'm going to let her talk about this one.
Okay then. I have always tracked our spending. I use a program called Mint online, mint.com. And I started reporting all of our marine expenses. I thought it was really interesting that nobody was really putting it out there in terms of a new cruising boat. What does it actually cost to run the boat and marine operations side of a cruising boat, of a new cruising catamaran? So because it's a new boat, you kind of think it wouldn't have a lot of maintenance, but that is a big fat lie. It does have expensive maintenance. Mm-hmm. And because it's a fairly big boat, yes, we do have to pay more when we dock our boat. So, that being said, I've broken it down, and there are blog posts on this for the 2 full 12-month periods that we have been out cruising.
I'm going to see if I can maybe link somehow down here somewhere, if not here, in the description below, to more of these informational posts.
We may have just been pointing at deer, but okay. So, the blog posts are more detailed, and I took the time to write them, so I highly recommend that you check them out. But I will break down our marine costs for you real quick. So we have repair and maintenance, which was about $16,500 in a year. We have vessel insurance at $8,300 a year. Customs at $370 a year. Docking, $2,900 a year. Fuel, which is going to be diesel, petrol, and propane, that is $2,300. And then communications at $2,350. So that is all for our second year of cruising. And that total comes to $32,000. I did this last time. $32,720 of marine expenditures on our boat. So for that year, we started in French Polynesia and we were cruising the South Pacific. Things like docking and moorings were very cheap. We actually spent less on customs and immigrations as well because those countries were fairly cheap to clear into. Repair.
And as a side note, French Polynesia was not necessarily that cheap, but we cleared into it in the previous year, so it wasn't included in that customs calculation.
Yes.
So this is a 1-year snapshot.
Yes. Repair and maintenance was actually about the same from the previous year. So we've been cruising almost 3 years. In our first 2 years of cruising, we spent almost exactly $16,500 on our boat. And that is strictly repair and maintenance work. So that is, that's kind of a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. But, we try to keep Starry Horizons in pretty good condition. It's one of those, like, if there's something that needs to be fixed, we try to fix it pretty much immediately rather than just waiting. And sometimes that requires us to get a little creative and maybe a little more expensive buying a part in Fiji rather than waiting to New Zealand or something. But,
Yep.
we want to make sure we keep the boat in as good a condition as we can. And we're willing to spend the money on that one. So,
like shippings our battens to Fiji instead of waiting. Yeah.
That'll do it. Yeah.
But it saves you diesel costs down the road. So, yeah, if you're buying a new catamaran, that is our recommendation. Is our what we spent on our new catamaran, about $32,000. A lot of people ask about the personal costs of cruising. And our very firm stand on that is that it does not matter what anybody else is spending while cruising. It is not what you are going to spend while you're cruising.
Yeah, cruising is what you make of it. So you're going to spend whatever your budget is.
And that's on the personal things like health insurance and food and medical costs. Like that is going to vary so widely from boat to boat. We know people like, I'm going to throw in a little bit here for gringos abroad who have cruised on $18,000 a year. And for the life of me, I can't find the link that someone sent me, but it's an Australian couple who's on a big old power boat, and I swear to God, they spent $100,000 in 1 year. So, people spend a whole ton of money, and the best thing I can say to you is those things are independent of whether you're cruising or not. You're still going to need clothes to wear, you're still going to need to buy food, you're still going to need to have health insurance. So take a look at what you're spending now, and try to apply that to your cruising forecast. So if you think you're spending too much money on food, then cut back on meat or start buying beans more often or something. Like it doesn't matter what we spend, it matters what you spend. So you'll have to look at your own finances to try to understand that.
All right, well, let's move on to the next kind of general topic. And we had a lot of questions around personal safety. So what's the biggest danger you've experienced while sailing?
What's the biggest danger we've had?
So I think it was when I had to dive in the Pacific Ocean to go free the plastic netting that got wrapped around the sail drives for Julia when we were doing that delivery, just because like diving in the ocean, if something happens, the boat gets away, that's just, it's not good. And whenever I have guests on the boat, I always tell them the first rule of the boat is to stay on the boat. So jumping off the boat is always just makes me a bit nervous. But it's people always ask us what's the danger and everything. But truthfully, like the statistics are not that bad for sailing. Driving your car is much riskier than going and crossing an ocean, believe it or not. So
yeah, and like a lot of people ask, what's the worst weather you've seen? Well, nothing's been really bad. Like I think, are fairly conservative when we look at our weather windows, and so we haven't been horribly uncomfortable anytime.
Yeah, I mean, crossing the Bay of Biscay was kind of a rough one. Sailing down to Fiji was another rough passage.
Sailing down to New Zealand.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I always get backwards. But so those were two passages we knew were going to be a bit rough because they're just very traditional that way. Like you just really can't avoid it. But we just did what we had to do. But other than that, we picked our weather windows quite, like we said, conservatively and done pretty well. So yeah.
But just in case, we do have safety gear on board. So for Starry Horizons, we have a drogue, a sea anchor, a EPIRB, our inReach spot tracker, a satellite phone, and a life raft. So thankfully we use our spot tracker in our inReach, or our spot tracker in our Iridium Go. But other than that, we haven't used anything. They are very expensive and very heavy pieces of equipment on our boat, but we have them in case of an emergency.
It's my philosophy, like having an umbrella. If you have your umbrella, you're not going to need it. So if we have the safety gear, we're not going to need it. But for us, it's one of those nice to haves. It makes us feel a little bit better. Makes our parents feel a little bit better that we're out at sea and have as much safety gear as we can or might need to use. So the other kind of big questions we got around safety was like personal safety. Have we ever felt in danger or threatened? While we've been out and about, and I would say no.
We need to backtrack a little bit because we have personal safety devices on the boat as well for offshore sailing.
It's kind of important, I guess.
I know. David just kind of glazed right over it. We do have deck vests that we wear when we are outside of our enclosure while we're out at sea. We also...
Now, I'm going to put a little asterisk on here because I know people will mention this. We have them and will wear them if we fear the conditions warranted. Like being out in the open ocean in a foot swell in like 10 knots of wind, I don't feel any need to be walking around wearing the deck vest.
When we're both awake.
Yeah.
When we're both awake.
I mean, the boat's as flat as it is at anchor. So if the conditions warrant, if we're in seas or if one of us is sleeping, then we're wearing the deck vest going forward, and we have tethers that will strap into the the jack lines, and we're not dumb about it, but I know everyone is we're going to have comments down below, so you should always be wearing your vest, and
it's just
good luck convincing people of that while you're out in the middle of the ocean. So yeah.
One device we do have strapped into our deck vest is a personal AIS. Now, if you happen to fall overboard, you are most likely to get rescued by your own boat or by another boat. And there's a lot of discussion on the forums about a individual PLB, which is a personal locator beacon, versus a personal AIS. And a personal locator beacon uses a signal that is not something you can read from any old boat. It is a Coast Guard frequency. So if you want to get rescued by your own boat, you need to have a personal AIS on board. Ours are, I actually did this myself, embedded them in our deck vests while we were in La Rochelle, so that if the deck vest inflates, the personal AIS device goes off and pings any boats in the area that are receiving AIS. That's a really important part of our safety gear. So it's not just falling overboard, having your deck vest inflate, and then floating there until you starve to death, which sounds great, right? It is being rescued while at sea. It's very important. Yeah. Okay, so on land, as we're traveling, have you felt unsafe anywhere?
Well, trying to remember to drive on the left side of the road in New Zealand while learning how to drive stick, that was a little unsafe maybe, but we didn't crash anything, so I think that was okay. But it's like you're going into different cultures, and I think people just kind of have a little bit of difficulty contemplating that. But most of the people we've met, if you're friendly to them, they're going to be friendly back to you. And
I think, I probably walked by myself in Dominica and thought, okay, I wish David was here with me, just because catcalling and stuff was kind of bad. But other than that, I go by myself all the time, and as long as you're smart about it and aware of your surroundings, that's not something you should be worried about. Yeah. The dinghy, Little Dipper, we have her outboard locked to the dinghy itself, and it ain't never coming off.
Yeah, that lock's pretty much seized on there now, so I will have to cut that hole. It's a bar that locks over the actual bolts that actually attach the outboard onto the transom of the dinghy, and so that's pretty well seized. It's very, very, very well locked on. Good luck getting the outboard off.
We are committed to Little Dipper having that outboard.
Forever.
We also use a chain and a lock to secure our dinghy to shore most of the time, unless we're on a remote island or something. What else about that? Petty theft is the biggest issue that cruisers should worry about, especially with regards to outboards and petrol in your dinghy, or unleaded gasoline, as Americans would say. So we have our outboard securely locked to our dinghy, and if somebody steals our diesel, there's no way to protect against that, really. But
petrol.
Petrol. Yeah, if someone steals our petrol, we carry $50 worth of petrol, up to $50 worth of petrol. So
yeah, the biggest hassle would be replacing the tank, but that's doable just about anywhere. So
yeah, it's unfortunate that cruisers have to worry about it, but I think the Caribbean in general is a lot worse for that than the South Pacific has been.
Yeah.
So, personal safety and what scares us the most. I thought there are two good stories we have in terms of maintenance issues that we had sneak up on us. Yeah. That would be good to share.
So the first one was our proof that the Bermuda Triangle was real. It
exists, guys.
Real. Yeah. So we were sailing from Bermuda down to the British Virgin Islands, and I think just about the morning after our first night at sea, I was up on watch, Amy was still sleeping, and all of a sudden all of our electronics started going out. We lost our wind instrumentation, we lost our radar, we lost our autopilot, which is kind of a big one. So trying to figure out what all was going on was a bit challenging up there by myself. So I came down and I got Amy and I said, you need to come up and we're gonna have to hand steer so that I can go through the boat, try to figure out what's going on. And this is where having our at-sea communications really came in handy. So I was able to call up some of our shoreside support people and say, what would you recommend that I might try first, so I'm not just tearing everything on the boat apart? And they gave me a couple tips of things to go try, and I was able to discover the problem. What had happened was the Raymarine connector going into our transducer had cracked. So every time like the boat would move and the cable would just open and close a little bit, it was shorting out like the rest of the system. So as soon as I found out that that was the cable that had the problem, I could just unplug the transducer, boom, everything else came back up online. So, you know, it was one of those, we were very calm and rational about it. It was okay, we need to figure out what the problem is. We'll take some time to figure that out. Amy was hand steering. You know, we had a conversation was, okay, so what happens if we can't figure this out? We just left Bermuda, getting back up there would be requiring us to go upwind. It was still about another 5-ish days, I think, down to the BVIs.
Yep.
And hand steering with just 2 people on the boat would not be fun. But as Amy mentioned, we do have the sea anchor on the boat, and we got that for a reason, so that if in this sort of instance, if something were to happen and we just got absolutely so tired we couldn't hand steer anymore, we just deploy that off the front, go down, sleep for a while, and then come back up, reel it in, and continue going. So that's kind of our backup plan, like if something were to happen to the boat's autopilot. And like that was a specific question later, so we'll probably come back to that one. But yeah, so that was, you know, it was a rational plan. We thought it out. We problem solved. We got it figured out, and it worked out just fine. So yeah.
And then the second story we have about trouble at sea was after we left Fiji. I think it was the night we left Fiji this past year in 2017, and I'm on watch. It's like 11 o'clock, and all of a sudden my steerage is gone. And the autopilot's on, but it's not working, and the boat is just, obviously I'm at the helm watching the boat do this. The boat heaves to, whatever. Heaves itself to, which is awesome, because I'm thinking I have no rudder control. I still have no idea how that happened. Like, I would think if you have no rudder control, your rudders would just be on one side and you'd be going in circles, which sucks. But Starry Horizons hove to. I woke David up immediately, said we have a problem with our steering. And he was able to get into the engine room and diagnose the problem and fix it. And it ended up being...
So the hydraulic ram for the autopilot control attaches to the rudder arm, and it attaches in such a way that like it's almost a ball bearing type thing, and the rudder arm hydraulic attachment had worn enough that it had fallen off. So I was able to get a large enough washer that I could put it up under there, tighten the bolt back on, and basically use the washer to keep it up and control the arm, and that did the trick. So it was kind of figuring out what the problem is, and of course it was happening at night, so figuring out what the problem is, getting the parts, getting it fixed, and then getting us back on way. So, but actually this was quite nice because we were doing a sail with a couple of other friend boats, and they called us, said, hey, it looks like you guys are having problems, is everything okay? And you know, so that was a nice little backup. But you know, the biggest thing for personal safety is you got to be able to just keep your calm and figure things out. Like I always say this, that being able to problem solve and, you know, just calmly, rationally approach situations is how you get through cruising.
Yeah. And that, kids, is how we lost the first ever leg of the FP South Pacific Regatta, which you'll hear about later.
Yeah, that story is coming up. We will get to it. It's just a
in a video
it's
coming.
a while in coming. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so now we got some goofy security questions. Maybe not so goofy. Okay. The first one's goofy. Have we ever been attacked by a giant squid?
Little squids. Littlest ones.
Oh, yeah.
They leave ink everywhere. Annoying as hell.
They land on the deck and they're disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but no giant squids.
No giant squids.
Yeah. No dragon trying to drag us to the deep or anything.
Yeah. Are you able to legally carry firearms on board?
Ooh, hot button
topic.
question right there. Yeah. I know this is such a big, controversial question for a lot of people. We have never owned guns, even though we're from Texas. That's generally one of the first questions we get. But our opinion is that having a gun on a cruising boat when you're cruising internationally is more trouble than it's worth. We've heard stories of people who cruise with guns. When they come into a country, you have to declare it. At times, the local authorities will remove the gun from your boat for safekeeping, in which case you then have to return to that port to get your gun. In like, for example, in French Polynesia, that's like 1,000 miles back upwind, or stories that your gun has disappeared while you've been out. And
this is not just like the rumors around the cruising forum. Basically, hopefully we can link below to an article from Captain Fatty Goodlander about his cruising experience with guns, and I think it is really pertinent. So wherever you fall on the gun issue that is so hot right now, just keep those things in mind.
Yeah. One other thing that I will mention is that the rules around the world for guns are very different than the United States. So in places where even if it's legal for you to keep your gun on your boat, if something were to happen and you were to like shoot an intruder, you would still be going to prison in a lot of places. So it's not the same sort of rules. I personally don't think that it's worth the hassle. That's our controversial opinion. Try not to comment too much on that down below, please.
Yeah.
So,
come on, guys.
Okay, next question.
Sharks.
Concerns about sharks when we get out of the boat. And you know what I will say? I was kind of surprised. I figured like when we first started cruising, I'd be really scared about sharks.
Yeah.
We've swam with a lot of sharks.
Yeah, I really didn't think that would happen. Like, I thought we'd never see sharks, but no. Guys, in the South Pacific, we should see sharks all the time.
Everywhere, yeah.
They are usually white tip reef sharks or black tip reef sharks, and they're
they don't care about us at all. Like,
yeah, they really don't.
Just going on their own way, doing their own thing, no big deal. But gray tip reef sharks, those guys,
gray reef sharks, not gray tip reef sharks.
They're pretty much just gray. I just don't like them. Just stay away from those guys.
They're just a little too inquisitive.
Yeah. So those are the most common ones we've seen. Now that we're in Australia, we've been hearing about bull sharks. Definitely going to stay away from those. Great whites, nah, they've got too many teeth. Crocodiles, those are a big problem in Australia. So, truthfully what worries me more is jellyfish. I really don't like jellyfish. And I think that's more likely to bother us than sharks on a regular basis. So.
And box jellyfish can kill you. Like, you're pretty much dead if you get stung by a box jellyfish. So, yeah.
Well, you're pretty much dead if you get eaten by a shark too. So neither of these things are great options, but the odds of them happening are very rare and minimal. So
very slim.
Yeah.
Crew.
Yes. So, question: when you guys crossed like the Atlantic, did you take crew, or was it just the two of us? And how would you do a 3-week passage next time? We have done 95-ish% of all of our passages, just the two of us. The only exception was my brother joined us from the Bahamas up to Canada, and I love my brother a lot, but he's not a sailor. He is, however, smart enough to pick up on everything that we taught him, and so he was doing night watches by himself pretty damn quick, but just the two of us, like, almost all the time. And part of that's kind of by design, I guess. Like, we enjoy doing these things by ourselves. It's kind of a bit of a challenge for us. Can we sail around the world, just the two of us? I think we form a pretty damn good team, actually, so it works pretty well. And, yeah. So for me, crew is kind of a non-essential thing. We certainly know lots of people who would prefer to have it. We've managed to, I think the biggest critical thing, and we'll touch on this a little bit more, is the watch schedule. If you can get your watch schedule figured out, doing it with a little bit shorter crew is okay, I think.
Yeah, and Scott asked, would you rather have good crew with you, or no crew for long passages? I mean, if we, and we have definitely done this, we have invited sailors that we know personally that we feel like we could get along with to do a passage with us. None of them have accepted so far. I don't know what that says.
It may not be as popular as we think we are.
So yeah, of course, having a crew member on board that we know is skilled and that we trust at the helm, that would be easier because we would get to spend more time together and we'd get to sleep more. Yeah.
Which is a nice segue into the next one to talk about watches. Schedules. Yes. So we've gone through a bit of an evolution in our watch schedule program. When we left La Rochelle, France, I'll let you guys in on a little secret. We'd had quite a bit of sailing experience previously, including doing charters and a bunch of coastal sailing and stuff. But leaving France was the first time we'd done an overnight sail together. Yeah. So it's kind of like jumping in the deep end. And we started out doing the typical like 3-hour watches, but it just did not work for me specifically, because by the time like I would come off watch and fall asleep, after having taken a shower and kind of come off of the adrenaline, the high, unwind, I was getting like an hour of sleep at a time, and it's not enough to function for me. So
it's basically a nap. It's really tough.
Yeah, and so we knew that we had 3 days crossing the Bay of Biscay, we had 7 days from there down to the Canaries, and then we knew we had the long trek across the Atlantic. So it was important to us to find a shift that worked, and 3 hours just was not going to cut it. So what we've kind of evolved to is what we call like basically a soft 7-hour watch schedule. And it typically is Amy will cook dinner around like 6 p.m. on boat time, and then we'll have dinner together. I'll go down and go to sleep at about 7 p.m. and I will set my alarm for 2 a.m., getting that 7 hours of sleep. And if Amy needs me earlier, she'll come down and get me. But if I can get 5.5, 6 hours of that block of sleep, that does immense things for me in terms of like my awareness, functionality, everything. So that's worked much better for me. And when I come up, I let Amy go down and I let her sleep as long as she can. And I think for the first part of the passage, as we're kind of getting our sea legs and our routine down, that may not be a whole long period of time. Like you've been up
usually the first day I'm like up at 7 or something, because that's when I normally get up. And then the second day I'm exhausted, so I sleep until like 10.
Yeah.
And then the third day and on, it's like 8 or 9. So it's a moderate time.
Yeah. And
so I've gotten my 7 hours of sleep. And then when I get up, David goes to take a nap in the morning. And then when he gets up, around lunchtime typically, we have lunch together. And then I go take a nap. And then we start the whole thing all over again. So as we get further into the passages, I usually don't need a nap in the afternoon, and I will sleep long enough and sleep well enough in the evening or in the morning to not need a nap, which is great.
Yeah. So that's what's ended up working out for us. It is kind of a long period of time to be on watch, especially at night, but having that long period of uninterrupted sleep just makes all the difference in the world. So.
And I typically have no problem keeping myself awake and entertained until 2 a.m. in the morning. Like, I listen to podcasts, I listen to music with one earbud in. If I'm feeling up to it, I read or I play games. I never leave the helm at night. I always sit up at the helm, and I enjoy that because of the breeze and the fresh air, and that helps me with my seasickness. But yeah, it's not a problem to keep a constant watch on for us for 7 hours. Yeah. I think we do a really good job with that.
Yeah, and then the next question related to this is is there always someone on watch, or would both of you go to sleep while the boat's on autopilot? And the answer is no. We always have someone who is on watch. I think that's a very important part of good sea keeping. You never know what's going to happen. Like, we've had squalls that have just blown up out in the middle of nowhere, and you can have your boat on autopilot, but cats especially are reef by numbers. So if the wind picks up, you've got to have someone who's ready and able to quickly, reef the sails and handle things. So I think it's, I just do not like the idea of someone not being awake while you're out at sea.
And we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the relationships part, but like David and I super trust each other, and we know that we are not going to sleep on watch. Like, that is super critical. And if we were on a boat crewing and we found someone asleep on watch, that would be a major problem, because we need to trust all of our crew members that they are going to stay awake. I mean, it is a really bad idea. And, we could go off on a tangent. Maybe I will.
No,
I don't know
no tangents. I
don't know how single-handers do it, guys. Wow, it's hard.
It is impressive. It's hard, but, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on to other serious topics.
I know. The environment.
Yeah, another very serious topic.
Yeah. So, on our boat, we try to...
Well, let's ask the question first.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, if someone has a question, we'll read it, we'll answer it.
Fine. All right, garbage. How much do you generate, and where do you put it while under sale? It's an excellent question.
It is a really good question,
Bob,
not something that comes
good
a
job,
lot.
So before we leave on a passage or before we head out to remote islands, we take a very close look at especially foodstuffs that we have on board and what kind of trash they're going to generate, and we try to eliminate it. So we unpackage things and repackage them in reusable packages.
Whether that's Ziploc bags, which we then can wash, or whether it's Tupperware containers that also we can wash and reuse.
Yeah. So we do our best to eliminate trash before we leave shore. And when we cruised the Lao group of Fiji this year, we were gone for a month, and I think we had 2 bags of trash, 2 large kitchen-sized bags of trash by the time we were done. Actually, I think it was like a bag and a half. It really wasn't much.
Yeah.
So we're fairly good on board. And a few questions about what we've seen out there. We have talked about in our video on Julia about how we were sailing through the garbage patch and how much stuff there is out there. I think we've been in some places that have been a lot better than others. Like, I don't think I recall seeing a lot of trash in the Hapai group. Mm-mm. But I do recall seeing trash in Fulanga and Fiji. And it concerns me a lot, the kind of education and the kind of waste disposal systems that these smaller countries have.
And the fact that there basically are none unless you're on the big islands.
Yeah, so trash gets burned, which I don't like either. There's no recycling. So it's really hard for us because, first of all, let me say, we never put plastic overboard. Ever. And we do try to pick up trash sometimes. It is a little tricky in that we have to be able to store it on the boat, and another thing that we worry about all the time with trash is smell. So and bringing on organisms on the boat. Yeah, bringing on organic matter. It makes it really hard for us because we don't want our boat to smell like a disgusting fishing boat. But the education and the waste disposal systems in these small countries are a real problem. And we are concerned that it is going to be a tough year for us in that respect because I hear Indonesia is really bad. And
Southeast Asia is a general rule.
Southeast Asia is a general
where we're headed up to next.
So there's no recycling programs, and now we're here in Australia and we are like recycling everything that we can because I think that's honestly the best method.
So the truth is, like, you just do the absolute best you can do. I mean, we do try to reduce our trash and throw everything away when we're in these big, metropolitan centers on the big islands. When we can, store trash until we're at places where we can dispose of it without it, just burning on a beach or, getting buried on a small island or something. But it's just one of those things that's really, really, really hard when you're cruising. So, we do the best we can, but
yeah, and
sometimes it's disappointing that it's not quite the same all the way around the world. And I understand logistically that it can be very difficult. Like, you can't expect a small island like Fulanga or Manubalabu to have a recycling station, but just there are ways to do better, I guess.
Yeah, it's tough. Someone else asked about black water. They didn't specifically say black water, but I know what they mean. Black water.
Yeah. So that is one of the things, like Starry Horizons does have holding tanks. We have 3 of them, 1 for each head. And so when we're in like a populated area, absolutely, we keep the holding tanks as closed as we can. And when we go out sailing in the ocean, then we open them. When you're out just kind of on like a big open anchorage, like...
We have friends that don't have holding tanks in their boat. So you gotta keep that in mind when you're gonna be swimming in an anchorage. Like, there are boats without holding tanks.
We do the best we can to keep the holding tanks closed until we're out, like, away from people and things, that we can open them and then, do that. But, like, pump out stations do not exist in the South Pacific. Like, you are just never going to find one.
That's not true. They do exist, but they're not very common. Like, in Fulanga, they just got running water. I mean, like, they do not have a pump out station. So every cruising boat is just got their holding tanks open in the lagoon.
Yeah. I mean, so it's just kind of what it is. Like, and there's not 1,000 boats, but yeah, that's one of the sides of cruising life, I suppose.
One of the uglier sides of cruising life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and this is actually kind of a nice segue into the next one. Medical questions.
Yes. What does your medical kit contain to deal with minor scrapes and bumps to more serious injuries and illness while potentially 2 to 3 weeks from the nearest medical help? And what is the extent of your training or preparedness, if any, to deal with unforeseen medical events at sea? This is a very good question. Super important for people who are getting ready to go cruising. We attended a 3-day offshore emergency medical course, and it was awesome. We actually flew up to Portland, Maine from Houston to take the course, and the company that puts it on is, I think, called Wilderness something. I'll put a link to it down below. And the class was geared towards cruisers who are going to be cruising in remote areas or out at sea for, a week or more. So we took a 3-day course, learned a whole ton of stuff. Everybody was cruisers, so they sat down and gave us recommendations for things that should be in our offshore emergency kit. And I do have a blog post where we list out everything that's in our medical kit that does not pertain to personal information. So link down here. Hopefully. But then a reminder, like, always talk to your doctor. We were very lucky that we had a cruiser sympathetic doctor in Houston. She was actually a sailor herself, and so we looked at the list of stuff, and she said, oh, okay, that's a great thing to have, that's a great thing to have. You're not going to be able to get that because it's a controlled drug, but here you can take this instead. And she wrote us prescriptions for everything we needed, and that was great. Now, the only things that we've used are Band-Aids, cortisone cream, and burn gel, Silvadene burn gel, because galley injuries. Yeah. And statistically speaking, that is the most common issues. It's going to be burns from the galley and cuts from the galley. So we've been fortunate that we haven't had any major issues. Someone did specifically ask about if we're prepared to make stitches, and no, we are not, because we learned in our course that you are more likely to have infection if you stitch it up, especially because we are inexperienced stitchers and we are not certified medical people. So their recommendation was to keep it open, let it aerate, heal naturally until you can get medical attention. And, worst case in the world, you have a ugly scar, but that's way better than getting infected while out at sea. So we are prepared to not stitch ourselves up if we get boo-boos. We do have steri strips, and we do have butterfly strips on board, so we can kind of close things up. And we also have these really cool clear bandage, the clear Band-Aids basically is what they are. So you can put them over a big wound, and you can still monitor the big wound without opening it. So we have a whole ton of stuff in our gear.
Yeah. Make sure you definitely check out the blog post, because that'll have a lot more information about what else in the medical kit. But I'm going to share a little bit of a good story here, because when Amy and I were first married, she did not do medical stuff. Start talking about a medical procedure, and she'll start turning whiter than normal.
It still happens. Yeah. I'm get queasy.
Yes, but she managed to get through the entire medical course, which was great for me, because I was worried if I cut myself pretty bad, she'd pass out, and I was just going to die. So.
David's survival rate skyrocketed.
Definitely.
Yes, Amy's not going to pass out.
Yeah. So that's a good thing to know about your partner when you go offshore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. Okay.
It definitely helps, yeah.
All right, more medical stuff. Insurance.
Yes. So this is another one of those big topics of questions amongst cruisers, is what do you do for insurance? So both medical and boat was this question. We did talk a little bit about boat insurance up in the expenditure stuff, but we have boat insurance for the boat. We have that through a company called International Marine Insurance Services. They have what's called the jackline policy. And for us, as we mentioned, it was really important for us to be able to do passages with only us. We didn't want to have a requirement to do additional crew, and that significantly limited the number of insurance companies that would accept us. It wasn't that difficult for us to get insurance. We do have quite a bit of boating experience in the background. We do both have our U.S. 100-ton captain's licenses, so that significantly helped. Each year we're going in different areas. We can talk to the insurance company and get a quote and say, what is our rate going to be for this year, and compares to various other ones. So it certainly is possible to get insurance in various parts of the world. There are restrictions for where you can be what time of the year, so you avoid cyclones and hurricanes, which I'm okay with that restriction because I don't want to be anywhere near a cyclone or hurricane.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's what we do for boat insurance. For medical insurance, a lot of people don't have it out here, and the truth is that the cost of medical care in lots of other parts of the world is significantly cheaper than in the U.S. So, yep. It's not quite as catastrophic to not have medical insurance. We did choose to get medical insurance just to cover any major catastrophes. It is a U.S. expat healthcare plan. So it's through Azimuth, and it's their Meridian expat plan. So, that gives us coverage when we're in foreign countries and stuff like that. We can still go do like a yearly doctor checkup and that sort of things. Yep. So it's just a little bit of extra peace of mind for us. It's another one of those things. You're laying out your budget, what's important to you. That's something you'll have to take a look at and investigate.
And it helps that we are young with little to none pre-existing conditions. So, yes. Yeah. We should notice though, or should remark though, that the expat insurance, we are required to be outside of the United States for more than 6 months of the year. Yeah. So that's actually why we went to Canada. Our first year cruising was because we needed to get out of the cyclone zone, but we needed to get away from the United States as well.
Yeah. So, those are those little details you got to kind of consider when you're shopping for insurance and considering your cruising plans. Yeah.
All right. Next section.
Ooh, the fun one.
Is our boat setup.
Yeah. So this was, I think, the most popular question that was asked, which I'm kind of surprised about.
I think it was because of the wording.
Yeah. And there may have been a little interesting side there. So I think the edited question was, how is your solar power system working? And what would you be doing different now if you were setting up a solar panel system now? So a little bit of stats for you. We have 1,060 watts of total solar on the boat. We have 820 watt panels and two 50 watt panels on the boat. They are Solara semi-flexible, so they are not like the thick glass ones. They can't roll them, but they have a little bit of flex to them, and they are covered in like a non-skid type stuff, which was important to me because the way that the solar panels are spread out around the boat meant it covered a lot of real estate, and I wanted to be able to walk on them, so that was important. This past year, I was actually keeping track of how much output our solar was giving us, and I think the results are a little bit skewed because our batteries were dying at this time, so we were doing a lot of charging to keep the voltage levels up, which meant that there wasn't like a full load being placed on the batteries, or placed on the solar panels trying to charge the batteries. So I think there's room for some extra performance, which I will hopefully be tracking and keeping another spreadsheet of this coming year.
Now that we have our new batteries.
Now we have new batteries. So we averaged 190 amps over 55 days of varying conditions. So that was like sunny, partially sunny, cloudy, rainy, everything. So over all 55 days, it was 190 amp hours that we got from our solar panels, which with as much as we have in ideal conditions with full load on the batteries, we could potentially get up to like 350. So like I said, there's some room for improvement there. I'm not sure if it was partially because the batteries were dying and thus, we were charging them up more frequently with the generator or the engines. But yeah. So what would I do differently? I would add another panel on top of our hardtop because we have the room for it, but we didn't know that when we placed the order because we hadn't finalized the design of the hardtop. But the other really big thing I would do is get solar controllers. We have MPPT controllers that are programmable. The ones we had originally were Genasun controllers, and they were only for lead-acid batteries. As you might be able to guess based on this statement, we ended up swapping our type of batteries, which meant we had to replace all our controllers, which was a bummer. So we now went to controllers that we can program for any type of batteries that we want to put on there. Should have just done that from the start.
And don't worry guys, a video about the batteries will be coming. It will answer all of your questions. Please do not ask us questions about our batteries. They will be coming. Okay, water.
Ooh, yes. So, how much water do we go through per day on average? More fun stats for you. We have a 200-gallon, which I'm learning my metric, is 750 liters of water tanks on the boat. We usually go about 5 days between filling up the tanks and then to the point where we are low enough that we want to refill the tanks. So that is about 40 gallons or 150 liters per day for the both of us. And that includes things like showers. We have freshwater toilets on the boat, washing dishes, doing laundry, all those sort of things. And because we have that very high capacity water maker, does 30 gallons an hour or about 120 liters, that means like we can make a lot of water, and
we're not stingy.
We're not that stingy on it. So if we want to shower in the morning, we shower in the morning. If we want to shower after we went swimming, then we shower again. So I mean, there's certainly ways to conserve more water. Our way is not the most conservative ever, but we set up the boat so that we could do this, and that was our design.
Yeah. David's been encouraging me to keep my hair a little bit shorter because I have very thick hair and I have to wash it every day. Sometimes twice.
Maybe that's the 20 gallons of water usage right there.
Yeah, sorry.
Now I will say in general, we do both take like the Navy showers, so we turn off the water whenever we're not like rinsing or anything. But yeah.
Yeah, we use a lot of water. We understand that. What are the most useful items you've brought along? Least useful, and what do you wish you brought but didn't?
Should I go first on this one?
Sure.
Okay. So I think the most useful thing is the marriage savers, which by definition is going to be the most useful thing. So just having the headset being up at the anchor and having Amy at the helm with the enclosure in the way and it being so far away is so hard to communicate. If I was raising my voice trying to just have her hear me, it sounds like I'm yelling, which is not my intention, but hurt feelings are both ways, it was not good. So getting the marriage savers I think was very useful for us being on the boat.
They come in handy in a lot of situations too, not just anchoring.
That's true. So like we can even use them if I'm going up the mast and I can talk about how far up I need to go, that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
So multiple use things. I will also say a good toolkit makes a world of difference because there's a lot of maintenance that gets done, and yeah, I use tools all the time.
Yep.
And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack over this. The least useful thing on the boat, paper charts. Sorry. We got paper charts for our entire way across the Atlantic. Would you like to know how many times we looked at them? 0. We have our chart plotters, our iPads, our phones. We've got handheld GPS. We've got our InReach. Our AIS has GPS. I mean, we've got so many GPS units on the boat. If we ever get lightning storms, we put several of those units in the oven to help protect from lightning. So yeah, we don't use paper charts. Plus, unless you're actually updating the paper charts with all the yearly corrections, they're going to be potentially very out of date and worthless. Whereas we can download our renewed navionics charts, electronic charts instantly whenever those updates come out. So yeah, that's my opinion on that one.
There's someone we know who shall remain nameless, who was talking about getting paper charts across the Pacific, and they wanted to chart their course every hour on the paper charts. I don't even know if you can do that because that's a lot of just paper charts where the paper chart is nothing but deep ocean. So that would be, I don't even know that they make that. I don't know.
Well, I guess it all depends on the scale of chart you get.
But if you're charting every hour, you need
That's true.
room.
You
That's
need to have
crazy.
a little bit more of a zoomed in thing. So, you know what? If you want to go with that route, more power to you. But my thing is, that's not something we really use on the boat. Now, one thing that I wish we brought but didn't.
It's my fault.
Having a drone from the start would have been awesome.
I was not sold on the drone.
Yeah. However, I will admit she came around, so that worked out quite well.
I did.
But there would have been some cool things, launching in the boat, coming across the Atlantic, those sort of things would have been pretty cool for the drone. In terms of like physical boat stuff, the truth is that if there was something we discovered that we really needed, like, I don't know, extra blocks or swapped out lines, something like that, we just changed things out and got it. So there's, you know, there's not a whole lot boat-related wise that I would go for. But now that I have answered.
So the most useful items I've brought along, my Kindle. My favorite thing.
I should have seen that one coming.
Because I probably read about 200 and some odd books last year. And I read most of them, 99% of them, for free. Because before I left, I renewed my library membership. So thank you, Helen Hall Library and Overdrive app. I have read so many books, it's bonkers. It's awesome. What is the least useful thing? A lot of, I don't feel like I'm a big clothes horse kind of person. I did bring some shoes and like a purse and belt and some nice clothes.
Allow me to jump in here and say she was very good about not bringing a huge closet on the boat.
I think David actually has more shoes than I do. Anyways, so
gotta be stylish.
I brought some of those things, and I think our boat is fairly good with mold and mildew. Like our humidity in the boat is good, and we don't have a problem as a general rule. But stuff that you don't use will mold. And as far as shoes go, like 90% of the time we're barefoot. 7% of the time we're in sneakers. And 2% of the time we're in flip-flops. And anything else is miscellaneous.
That percentage, yeah.
Flip-flops and sneakers?
Yeah.
No, I think we hike more than we
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah. So, like the shoes and stuff, just leave them behind. Yeah. And what do you wish you'd brought but didn't? I would say I wish that, maybe this isn't like a physical thing that I brought, but I wish that I'd picked up photography sooner. That was my goal for 2017 in January when we got back to New Zealand. I read a book on digital photography and started taking more photos and using a DSLR camera. And now I look back at blog posts and photos that I took from our original cruising, our first couple years of cruising, and I like cringe because I missed so many opportunities to take awesome photos and really record what we've done and the amazingness of our adventure. So I can't beat myself up too much for it because I think we're doing a great job with it now. But I highly encourage you, if you're going to go cruising, to buy a DSLR camera or a mirrorless camera and really give photography a go.
Yeah, I mean, there are pretty cheap DSLR cameras out there these days too, but just the quality of pictures you're going to get, and I know phones are getting really good these days, but a DSLR is just going to take it to that next level.
Yeah.
So. Okay, spares. Do you have a backup autopilot or major spares for your autopilot that you could install on passage? I know that there's another very famous Helia channel out there that had multiple problems with their autopilot, and I'm very happy to say that we have not, except for those two things that Amy mentioned, both of which were pretty easily solved. And as we kind of mentioned earlier, first of all, we do not have a backup autopilot. Our plan has always been that if something were to fail catastrophically and we'd had to hand steer, that we could use our sea anchor and stop the boat and get some sleep and rest and relaxation, and then continue along our way hand steering if necessary until we got to the next port. So that's been our plan. Yeah. So we don't have a whole lot of backups or major spares for the autopilot, but the next question was, do we have a lot of engine-related spares, or does the fact that we have two engines mean that we have built-in redundancy and we just could use one engine to get to the next port? And the answer is, we have a lot of spares.
Okay, good. I'm glad he answered it that way. I wasn't sure which way he was going.
Yeah. We have a lot of spares for pretty much everything else. So, I have gone through the boat and we have everything to try to do a lot of the maintenance myself on the generator and the engines. So we have more belts, impellers. We've got oil. We've got fuel, oil filters, primary and secondary for just about everything. And we've got a lot of spares. One thing I will say is that I kind of went overboard at the beginning and bought like a couple years worth of spares, and I was like, oh yeah, you can buy all these things in a lot of various places. So maybe I was a little bit overboard, but we used most of them throughout the years, so that's worked out all right. But
we also carry spares for a water maker.
Yeah,
that's an important one too.
So we kind of took a look and said, what are some of the critical important systems on the boat, and being able to generate power. So having the spares for the generator was an important thing for us. Being able to make water was an important thing. So we've got a spare lift pump on the boat, which is important because our lift pump has had trouble a couple times now. But also things like additional filters for the water maker. We've got a lot of those. And since it is dependent upon the generator to run, it was what do we need to do to make sure the generator runs. So we've got spare fuel pumps, like lift fuel pumps for the generator in case that were to go down. So we tried to evaluate kind of what was the weak points of these critical systems for us and trying to get those sort of spares, which has worked out pretty well for us so far.
Yeah.
Knocking on wood.
Yes. All right, what do we use to communicate when at sea? We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but we have the Iridium Go, and that's our main communication method. And we can use text, phone calls, and email through the Iridium Go.
Yeah.
You want to elaborate more on the email thing, because that's your domain?
Yeah, so we'll touch on this a little bit more because the email is actually how we get our weather information, but I know there's a specific question about weather, so I'll touch on that a little more later. But like when we're out at sea, we will generally like send notifications to our families and whatnot. And just, hey, we're alive, we're having a good time. Haven't caught any fish yet, but
we do update the blog and post on Facebook while we're out at sea.
So that part is good.
Yeah.
And then the Garmin InReach that we have also does texting as well. So that's kind of an additional backup in case we have an issue with our Iridium Go. We still can text people and get some weather from via text or something like that if we needed to.
Yep. All right, navigation. Since Navionics and Garmin is notoriously poor through French Polynesia and from Tonga to the Solomons, what charts and other navigation tools have you been using to pick your anchorages and find your way?
This is a complicated question. So, we use Navionics as the basis of our navigation, if you will. What we have used really to supplement that in this past year is a program called SAS Planet. And it is a really interesting program. It will allow you to download satellite imagery, and then what we can do is mark a track using that satellite imagery and send it to our Raymarine plotters and get an accurate idea of where that track is going to go. So that has made a huge difference. When you're actually looking at the satellite images, you can see like here is the track through the bommies to actually get into like a remote little isolated bay, whereas if you look at the Raymarine Navionics, it's just like reef everywhere, which trying to eyeball your way through that as you're coming in would be very risky. So having that kind of satellite imagery makes a huge difference. The other thing I'll say is that we've really been reliant upon what's called the compendium, and Amy has a lot more information on that one.
Yeah, that's more kind of like the cruising guide stuff. So.
Okay, we'll wait on that one. So go check out the cruising guide stuff later in the video.
Yep. All right, so then the weather technology.
Yeah, so there's a couple more questions, I guess, about SAS Planet and whether we use OpenCPN or not. So I'm going to cycle back and touch on that a little bit. And I will say that I did write a blog post on how to use SAS Planet, and I'm going to give a huge thank you to Brent from Catamaran Impy, because I got the idea from him and kind of have updated what he wrote with some of the things that I think the software changed a little bit. So those will be two really good resources to go and look at. It gives pretty good ideas of what you can do to set up the program, what charts and satellite images you can use, and then how to create tracks that you can then export to your chart plotters. So hopefully that will be helpful. We'll put that down below. And OpenCPN. Yes, we do use OpenCPN. It's got a couple of interesting features. It will tie into our AIS Vesper AIS system that puts out its own Wi-Fi network, which we can then put the computer onto and be able to see AIS targets there, which is just a nice little secondary backup to seeing all the AIS targets on our Raymarine. But the charts for OpenCPN, they're, I think, worse than the Navionics charts. So there's a lot of different sources out there, and I personally have not spent a whole lot of time trying to figure out if there's better sources than what we have, just because we have these other systems that have worked really well for us. So I know that there's people who use OpenCPN for their primary navigation system, and I'm sure maybe they can chime in with a little more information on how that uses it, but ours is for very kind of minor planning type purposes and stuff like that. So it's not a major part of our navigational system.
Oh. Okay, so ZY Grid?
Yes. Question is, what weather app do we use and what technology do we use to get it onto our computer? So we use on our Windows laptops a program called ZY Grib, and this program allows you to load up a grib file and be able to navigate through that grib file. When you have a regular network connection, it can actually download those grib files for you. But when you're out at sea, it doesn't have that capability. But what we can do is use email through our Iridium Go. And there's a service out there called, I want to make sure I get this right, it is SailDocs. And you can email them in a very specific format, and they will send you, based on your email request, a certain grid of gribs. Try saying that 10 times fast. So you can then get that, and it's a very small attachment, small enough that you can still download it with the Iridium Go. We can save that to our computer and then upload that to the ZY Grib program. Now, we've chosen to get the unlimited data package for the Iridium Go. Unfortunately, unlimited data is a little bit misleading because the connection speeds are slower than an old 14K modem, so we're not uploading to YouTube or anything while we're out and about, but it is enough that we can check the weather and pretty much as much as we want. We're out at passage, so I'll do it in the morning, in the evenings, and that way we can get an idea of what's coming towards us, set the sails, reef deeply if we need to in advance, and that seems to work out pretty well.
Yeah. David and Amy, if the chart in Fiji is terrible, can you hold the chart maker responsible for it?
No.
No.
When you start up your chart plotter, it will say, these charts are not to be used for navigational purposes.
Which is the stupidest thing ever.
Perfect sense.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not buying this to navigate. Of course not. So, this is again why I think having the SAS Planet with the satellite backups makes a really big difference. So we've got that extra level of comfort, but we also, as Amy mentioned, keep a watch all the time. Like when we're moving, if we're coming through reefs and stuff like that, like I'll be up on the bow and we've got our marriage sabers, there's another use for them. Kind of keeping an eye as we're actually going through the reef so I can give immediate feedback based on what I'm seeing. But no, they're not going to accept any liability for that one.
No. I also thought that was an interesting question because I'm working on a blog post about when charts are inaccurate and what you can do about it. So, in an ideal world, experienced cruisers like us would let Navionics know when there's an issue with the chart. And I have done that twice now, and I've gotten very quick responses from Navionics, and then they respond to let me know when my chart correction is in the upgrade. So that's been interesting. I've submitted 2 spots, Beverage Reef and Port Resolution on Tana Island in Vanuatu. So look for a blog post from me about that, which I think is really interesting and cool.
Yeah.
All right, Captain Cook sailed the world with no charts, a sextant, and a lead line. How do you think he would have coped with no GPS or internet?
Yeah, we'd be dead. Yeah.
We would not be dead.
All right, so the truth is, if we didn't have those things, we would have learned the skills needed to do this.
We have, so this question says no charts, and we have no charts on board. So if, for some bizarre reason, all of our navigation sources went down, which we have like 4 of them and they're all independent from each other, then would we be able to go, well, no, we don't have a sextant. I really can't answer this question.
We'd be dead.
We would not die. We would be floating. I think that, first of all, like I said, we have the navigation systems that are independent from each other, and that's great. Plus, we also have backup systems in case of failure. We can do an SOS through our Garmin inReach. We can transmit our EPIRB. We have our sat phone. So we can call for help using at least 3 independent methods. In addition, we have a ditch bag on our boat, which has emergency water rations, including a still, so we can make water still. Yeah. So we
desalinator, maybe?
Well, it's the solar still. Yeah.
That's an important distinction.
Yes. So you can make unlimited water with that, hypothetically. We have emergency food rations. I mean, plus we just have a ton of food on our boat all the time. We would not die.
All right, so if it happened to us in the middle, yes, we would not die. Would we have attempted this sort of thing without internet or GPS? That's where I was saying we would have learned the proper skills necessary, but my opinion is those skills aren't necessary now. So,
yeah,
there you go.
That's our 2 cents on it. Yeah, from our experiences sailing almost 3 years and 30,000 nautical miles.
We've somehow managed to get this far.
True. All right, our boat. Our specific boat, the Helia, which we are not on now, sadly. But in enclosing your helm station, did you take inspiration from the Popemobile?
Oh my goodness. I wish I could take, but
I like our boat. I think our boat is sexy.
She is a good looking boat.
Excuse me, Mr. DCMO. What the hell kind of a name is that? Anyways, just kidding.
I think you have offended the Admiral. Ooh.
I like our girl. I think she looks good with her helm station and enclosure, so to each his own. What do you dislike about the Helia 44? Good question, Brian.
All right, I'll go first. There are a few things, and again, most of these things that I'm going to mention are things we've identified and changed about the boat because we didn't like them. But the very first one was that from the factory, the boat did not have any intermediate cars in between the battens. So that meant there were like 15, 16 feet, like 6-ish, some terms like 5-6 meters of distance between the actual cars on the mainsail. So if you were into the wind trying to drop the main, it would billow out and like would not come down without me going up to the mast and physically pulling down the sail. That may be okay if you're chartering in the BVIs where it's nice and calm, you're not having to worry about reefing in big seas, but out in the middle of the ocean, that's not okay.
It's not fun.
No. So when we got to Florida, we had rigged a temporary downhaul system coming across the Atlantic, so we didn't have to worry about it that way. When we got to Florida, we added those intermediate cars onto the mainsail and don't have that problem anymore. So that makes a big difference.
And I understand they're doing something differently with the FP boats now anyways. Like they've started doing that differently from the factory. I'm pretty sure.
I'm not 100% sure about that one, but it might be worth a question if you're examining an FP boat from the factory. So
yep.
The other couple things that have been I don't particularly like is the sliding door into the owner's salon. It's the way it stays in the track is literally just kind of like a bolt and a nut. And that nut just continually unwinds itself and jams up in the track, which means that the door then gets stuck. And if you bring the nut all the way down so that the bolt is tight onto the door, then the door somehow managed to hit into the ceiling panels. It's not very well thought out. I've had to do this like 4 or 5 times, always when we're underway. So, it's a pain in the ass. I hope they change it someday.
Yep.
Then I think the davits are still a bit too low on the Helia.
They're taller on the Helia Evolution.
But still just barely. If you're really offshore cruising, it'd be nice to get the dinghy way up out of the water. So just kind of in general, like the Helia is a really good boat. Like we really do like the boat in general, but they've designed it with more of a charter focus in mind. So things like having a giant 12 kVA genset and 6 air conditionings on the boat, I don't really think are necessary. So From that side, it's a good base to start from, but there's definitely certain things about it that, if I were designing my own personal boat, I wouldn't necessarily make the same decisions.
But we are very happy with Starry Horizons. She's a good boat. I like her. So Anthony said, if you were buying your Helia over again, what would you do differently?
So, I'm going to break this into two different sides. One is what we would do differently ordering the Helia from the factory, and the other will be what we would do differently actually like doing the outfitting and commissioning it over ourselves. So, from the factory, as I just mentioned, the extremely large genset and the 6 air conditioning units, don't think we would do those two things again. We would do them aftermarket and get smaller ones and less air conditioning units, so less weight. And then, so the other thing is the cockpit fridge. So we have used it maybe a handful of times and only when we have guests on the boat. So we'll touch on this a little bit more later, but the fridge and freezer space, especially for just us two, is significantly more than enough. I don't even think Cheeky Monkey had a cockpit fridge, and they've had a lot more people on their boat than we have and seem to survive okay without it. So I wouldn't do that again. But as for the outfitting, and again, someone's asked more questions specifically about sail setup, and we'll get on that one. But the asymmetric spinnaker, we don't have a whole lot of comfort with it still. A lot of people that we've met that have parasailers really like theirs, so we would probably go with a parasailer over a asymmetric, at least top-down furling spinnaker. And a frequency converter that we have on the boat that converts like Australian 230 50 hertz into American 110 60. We used for the very first time like 2 weeks ago, and
it's like so big and heavy.
Yeah, not really worth it to do that. That being said, like, it's nice to have. It means we can plug in anywhere, but if we were starting over again from scratch, wouldn't make that same decision. And
knowing now that we rarely ever stay in marinas, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then the last one is the windshield wiper system at the helm. Like, we had really good intentions for this, and maybe we've just had really good luck, but we come into a lot of places when it's raining and you're out in the middle of the ocean, you don't really use a windshield wiper much. So I think we'd leave that one off the list. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, the electrical setup. Todd says, now that you're in 50 hertz power land, I would love to see or know more about your power converter and how you like it. I know it was a big addition to Starry Horizons.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've made ourselves kind of clear.
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan.
I mean, at the end of the day, the truth is that it will allow us to plug in anywhere in the world and get pure American power, which is what the rest of the boat is powered at. So now that we have it, it's certainly not like I'm ripping it out by any stretch, because it is really nice to have. It means everything's going to work just fine on the boat. But it's one of those, we just didn't know for our cruising style that we weren't really going to use it or need it. So from that aspect, we wouldn't really do it again. But because you asked, the details. It is a Atlas frequency converter, shore power converter. It is a 12 kVA unit, so it's as large as the genset, which means it will run everything on the boat. And it is made up of 3 different modules, and I'm going to read this so that I can make sure I get it right. It is an input-output module, an inverter module, and then a control module. And as Amy mentioned, it's really heavy. So we had to basically tear out the under berth storage section on the starboard owner side in order to fit this thing, and it weighs over 400 pounds, which is like 180 kilograms. So it's big, really, really big. So yeah, there's the details. We'll just leave it at that and move on.
Yeah. Likes and dislikes about our 110 volt installation and appliances.
I mean, the truth is most of the world is not on 110, so from that side it's a little annoying. Like, coming into a marina in Australia, if we didn't have the frequency converter, we'd have to be a little more careful about what sort of stuff we could run. The biggest thing for us was air conditioning, which is why we got the frequency converter, so that the air conditionings would run no problem. What we have since learned is also that the air conditionings are will run at 50 hertz. The 60 hertz units will just run a little bit slower, so they're derated, which doesn't mean they wouldn't work, but yeah. But for us, like, we're gonna end up taking the boat back to the U.S. and the Caribbean at some point anyways, and that's, you know, someday down the road when we sell the boat, that's where she'll be. So it makes sense for us to have 110 volts, and that's what we know, that's what all of our electronics and laptops and stuff are. So from that side, it makes sense for us to have a 110 volt boat, but
yep.
Yeah.
Are your batteries strong enough to run household appliances, or do you need to run the generator to have toast in the morning? Well, I'm very sad to tell you, we do not have a toaster.
Yeah. So we don't have a whole lot of like AC appliances on the boat. We don't have a coffee maker. We don't have a toaster. We don't have a, you know, a blow dryer or hair dryer. No microwave on the boat. So there's not a whole lot of actual AC appliances that we would run.
And I will say we don't miss any of those things.
No.
Yeah.
We don't. So there's kind of two sides to this question though. One is how large is your battery bank, and our AGM battery bank was 1,000 amp hours, which is pretty damn massive, and we had a 2,000 watt inverter on the boat. So depending on everything that we would run, those two combinations would be enough to run a household appliance for a little while if we wanted to.
There are basically three things we don't run off of our batteries: our air conditioning, our dryer, because we have a washer dryer combo. We don't run the dryer. We line dry anyways. And the third one was the rice cooker, but that was more because our batteries were kind of biting the dust. So I think maybe David will let me run the rice cooker without running the generator now.
Which are really nice, yes.
Yeah.
And then the water maker.
Oh yeah, and the water maker.
That one. Yeah, but
yeah.
Yeah. So that was about it, I think.
Yeah. So I think it's a good setup. Like, we don't worry too much about that kind of stuff.
But as Amy mentioned, I mean, a lot of it is we just don't have a whole lot of those appliances, so we don't really worry about it.
Yeah. Next topic: food storage and provisioning. Barbara asks, what size fridge and freezer do you have, and is it okay for a longer time off the grid? We have, and somebody else asked the same question too. We have a 190 liter fridge.
It's the drawer style.
The 2 drawer style.
No, that one's in isotherm.
Oh, isotherm, sorry. And then we have a 90 liter freezer. And we also have our cockpit fridge. So when we turn our cockpit fridge on, we use it for drinks. Like when we have guests aboard, like 2 to 4 guests, we put drinks in there. Otherwise, we never use it. So we're not too keen on having it anymore. The fridge and freezer space that we do have that we use all the time is actually excellent. I have gone to a butcher, gotten meat vacuum sealed and portioned out, and then it like all fits nice and perfectly in the freezer. And doing that, I can get 130 servings of meat in our freezer. If we have 2 servings of meat a day for dinner, then that's 65 days of meat dinners while we're cruising. So that's quite a bit.
Lot.
Yeah. So we are good to go. As far as the other goods go, like, we do a lot of storage not in the fridge. Cabbage, carrots, cucumbers, anything that we get from the grocery store, or from the market, from the produce market in the South Pacific. Typically it's good to store in dry storage. So I think our food storage and provisioning is really awesome, and we've never suffered for food.
Yeah, I will also say that when we have people that come on the boat, pretty much every single one says, wow, you have so much food storage. So that is
other cruisers.
Yeah, that is kind of one of the perks of, you know, a boat that's maybe more designed for charter, is they've just got a lot of food storage on the boat. So
yeah. We like the space.
And there was another question if we had a barbecue or not. And yes, yes we do. We have a Magma grill that's on the stern of the boat. So.
And we really like it.
Yeah. Moving on to sails. Can we do a run through on our head sails, what we have, when you use them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, a few stats first. The Genoa is from the factory. and it's a 46 square meter or 495 square feet. The Screecher is 80 square meters or 864 square feet. And the asymmetric spinnaker we have is 130 square meters or 1,397 square feet, which is very big. The Screecher is a 4-ounce Dacron, so it's a pretty thick sail actually, and the spinnaker is made out of a Nylite 90 nylon. Pretty sure I have that right. So our original intention was that the Screecher we would use kind of in a little bit heavier winds, and heavier maybe to like 16 knots of apparent wind speed or something like that.
Heavier compared to the spinnaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we generally will fly the Screecher from about like 55 degrees. We can get it all the way that tight, down to about like 130, which is where it starts getting kind of blanketed by the mainsail if we're trying to go deep. And then for the spinnaker, we would use kind of like all the way from about 85 degrees all the way down to about 165 degrees. That was kind of the original intention. As it turns out, we either really suck using our spinnaker or just have ridiculously bad luck at it, since we have ripped it three times, including once just completely in half coming into the Galapagos. So I think we're just almost a little scared of that sail now. So we've really ended up using primarily just the Genoa and the Screecher. And we've come up with a couple different tricks that we use. The first for the Genoa is when we're starting to get anything deeper than 90 degrees, the sail shape just, there's too much twist at the top of the sail. So what we will do is tie on an outboard jib lead, pull out the whole foot of the sail to like the tow rail, lead the outboard jib lead back to an aft winch, and then we can let go of the sheet from the helm, and the whole sail just opens up, grabs a whole lot more wind, better sail shape. It's amazing what a difference it makes on anything about 90 degrees or deeper. Mm-hmm. And then we still use the Screecher pretty much on the wind angles that I've mentioned. We use those on the wind angles I've mentioned from the bowsprit. If we're getting deeper than about like 120, we will move the Screecher over to the windward bow. And that will allow us to get just a little bit further, a little bit deeper, maybe down to like 150, 155 with the mainsail up before it then starts really getting too blanketed to be able to use. So we've kind of come up with that trick, which lets us use the Screecher in some of the spinnaker realm. And then the other big trick is that we've gone and started using the Genoa and the Screecher as kind of a dual headsail setup. So since the Genoa has its own forestay and the Screecher's up on the bowsprit, we can pull the Screecher out to one side, put the outboard jib lead on the Genoa, pull it out to the other side, and it's almost like a poor man's symmetric spinnaker. And we can go pretty much like dead downwind using that. It's not very fast, but it works. So that's...
They like keep each other full, which is really nice, because we've done it with the mainsail and like the Genoa or the Screecher, and they don't work together quite as well to stay full and not like bang around so much.
Yeah. So we found out that seems to work pretty well. And one thing I do want to mention is that we have a Carver KF2 continuous line furler that we use for both the Screecher and the spinnaker. For the spinnaker, we have a ProFurl Spinex top-down furling system. So that means that rather than a sock for launching and deploying the spinnaker, it actually will furl from the top down. And yeah, so we can use the same furler for both of those and hopefully keep things a little bit easier. Keep my fingers crossed we get a little more experience with the spinnaker this upcoming year. So hopefully that covers the good, the bad, and the ugly for the head sails.
I think it's worth noting that this Screecher is the optimum sail for us for speed. So if we've got wind on the beam and we've got our Screecher up and the wind is like 15 knots apparent wind speed, that's when we really peak for our boat speed.
Yeah. So.
All right, after issues with your mainsail, losing our patents, Some say you should have spare sales. Do you have spares? Is it worth it to have spare sales?
No. My opinion is that, especially for the main sail, it's just way too massive for a boat like us to have a spare main. We lost the use of our main through a pretty dumb mistake. And if there was something wrong with the tearing of the fabric, then there's ways to fix that relatively easily while you're out cruising. So just sourcing the battens for our sail was the tricky part. As for spare Genoas or something like that, that's a bit of a different story and kind of up to each individual sailor with how much you want to have. We know people who have a Genoa but also a storm sail or something like that they can hank on if they want to. But for us, we've got so many different head sails that we feel some combination of what we have will get us into the next port.
Yeah, and if you have good flexibility in your schedule, then you can wait for winds or wait for calm, and you can motor if you have to.
Yeah.
So. Okay, next topic is relationships.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm really surprised that this was a very popular questions that were asked. I wasn't quite anticipating this, but yeah, this will be a fun one.
Yes, so RJH commented. I'm going to read his whole comment because I think it is sweet. One of my favorite pastimes is watching couples sail around the world together because things break on sailboats every day. Very true. I like to watch how couples like yourselves work together over the years to fix things on their boats. Observing how couples overcome adversity on their sailboats and continue to grow in their relationships instead of letting the hardships of life break them apart is what appeals to me. I like comparing the young couples like yourselves to the older couples like on Emerald Steel who have been at this for over 30 years. Relationships are difficult enough on land. So what has been your secret to keeping your relationship going and mature on the water?
That is a really good question.
I think he meant to say growing and maturing on the water. Yeah. But, and a couple other people have chimed in things. Well, all just kind of about...
All right. I just want to make sure we answer
all about
the questions
relationships here. and how we make it work. So what is your secret to keeping your relationship growing and maturing on the water? What is our secret?
Well, so it's a really, really, really good question. My initial answer is just that we're always interested in supporting each other, and when something good happens for Amy, I feel really excited about it, for her. So when she's been doing all these photography and getting these amazing, awesome shots of the star, Milky Way galaxy and stuff like that. I get legitimately excited when I get to see that from her. Or when she sells an article to Cruising World, I'm so excited for her. And I think it's just so awesome to be able to watch your partner kind of grow and expand themselves. That, yeah, it's really fun to just kind of be there and support that. But being on the water gives you opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily have had on land. It's kind of opened us up to a whole bunch of different things that we get a chance to explore and see what we're passionate about, and it's fun to be able to watch the other person grow.
I think we're really good about communicating with each other about what we do well, and I tell David all the time that I'm amazed with how much stuff he's learned about repairing and maintaining the boat.
Not bad for a finance guy.
And I think that's a very important part of our relationship is we talk a lot about it and how awesome we each are together.
Yeah, it certainly helps.
Yeah.
So
we may have a situation where David's struggling with something and I'm able to complement his work ability in whatever project it is, and that's really great as well.
Yeah. I really want to get to this next one too, because
Okay.
I think this is pretty important. So how have we found ways to adapt, just being on the water, and how has such a relationship brought us closer to each other? And I think that kind of ties into what we were just talking about. But one of the things that's really been, I think, important for us, and especially recently, is instituting kind of we've literally have a weekly meeting on the calendar of what's coming up, what's been good, what's been a bit of a challenge, what should we have spent more time talking about, or making sure that we're both happy and enjoying what we're doing. And man, I mean, we're not relationship therapists by any stretch of the imagination, but it's been really interesting kind of what sort of conversations come out of that, and things that may not have been as big of an issue for me, like and would not have necessarily thought of it, but this is something that really matters to Amy, and hearing her talk about this is like, okay, this is something that we need to pay attention to, and either need to change something or do something a little different that make sure we can solve any issues before it just starts festering and becomes a big issue. So finding that ways to kind of keep that communication open has really, really been helpful, I think.
Yeah. Cruising was a big transition. It was really hard. I think that a lot of it was that from my perspective, I went from owning my own business and being incredibly knowledgeable about it and having employees work for me, lots of employees work for me, transitioning into a situation where David has been doing all this research about the boats and the systems and has done that whole thing, and I know very little about it. So all of a sudden I am not the go-to person anymore, and I'm relying on David. So that was definitely a big transition, challenging period for us. I also worried about being bored on the boat. We talked about it a lot before we left because I was working a lot, and it hasn't been a problem. Like, I've picked up writing and photography, and I've always been an avid reader, so I just got to fall back into that and found ways to keep myself busy, and I haven't missed work. Well, I've missed the people. Let me say, I missed the people that I worked with a lot, but I haven't missed working.
Yeah. And, that's kind of an important thing to just keep in mind, is that being on the water is a very different dynamic than, just being on land. Just, we spent a lot of time with each other, even before we left, but being around someone all the time, it is a challenging thing in our relationship. So kind of tying into the next one, but explaining how important it is that you work together and have timeouts or time alone. I do think that's important. So like if Amy wants to go off and snorkel or do something like a hike or that sort of thing, then it is, I think, important to be able to have like a little bit of alone time and kind of just some me time, if you will. Like, it never hurts, and being able to have more stories that you can then share when you come back to each other is always a good thing. So
yeah, I think we both have slightly different energy levels. David does not mind being on the boat for days, weeks, maybe.
Weeks is pushing it, but definitely longer than Amy would like.
Yeah, I kind of start to be like, all right, I'm feeling a little ants in my pants. It's time to go out. And I'm more social than David. So I will take an opportunity if I need to go meet our neighbors and make new friends. But yeah, with time apart is definitely like something we feel that we have to do sometimes. But that being said, like, we spend a lot of time together, and it is one of my favorite parts of cruising. Yeah. I get to spend so much time with David.
Oh, isn't that sweet, everyone? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. All right, so is it hard as a couple to live so close, and what tips would you have not to kill him? So I
Very
like how
important, yeah.
I like how this question assumes that David is the one being killed. Yeah. What does that say about me?
Those fiery redheads, that's the problem.
True. So, tips we have not to kill each other. Give each other space, like we already talked about. Yeah. Finding your hobbies is good.
But I think communicating and being open about, even from the start, what your expectations are for this sort of thing, what you're hoping to get out of it, but then regularly communicating while you're out and about so that you can continue checking in and saying, is this still working for us? Is there something else that we want to focus on doing? Do we need to be doing more hikes? Do we need to be more social and meeting more cruisers? Like, those sort of things, just to make sure that each person finds a way to be happy is very important. So
yeah. I think what we have is very successful, and we're very lucky with that. I will say that we know 3 couples who've separated recently, cruising couples, and it is very hard on relationships. There was a women's only event that I went to a couple years back, and every woman in that group, except for me, has had like major change to their cruising life. Either they've stopped cruising, or they've separated, or they've gotten a different boat. So those are pretty not good odds, and it's just a really hard part of cruising, is maintaining a good relationship, and it's a risk. It's a big risk to take.
So one thing I will definitely say is that, like, we both had a passion for going and doing this so that we could, travel and see the world, and like, it's really hard when this sort of lifestyle is someone's passion and the other person is just going along with it. Like I mentioned, you gotta find a way so that both people can be happy with what you're doing. And if both people aren't happy, well, that's just putting on a whole lot of stress that, just being on a boat is a more stressful environment than just living on land. That's just the way it is. So if you're adding not being happy on top of that, well, yeah, that would not be a fun way to go. So make sure you both have a passion to do this sort of thing.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, David, how come you frown so much? Even your smile turns down.
Oh, man.
So ever since we read this, I've been wanting to do this. No. Close your mouth. David's frowning. David's smiling.
Oh, man. This may be at our next family meeting.
He's a very happy person, I promise.
I think it's because we're in the southern hemisphere. Everything's upside down here. So that's got to be what it is, yeah.
Clearly. All right. Travel planning, more specifically. So, how do you figure out where to go? Where do you buy cruising guides and flags for the new areas you travel to? In the big picture, there's a book that's very helpful called World Cruising Routes by Jimmy Cornell, and that is the go-to book for planning big trips.
World travel.
For planning world travel. So what the book does is it shows you a few suggested routes for circumnavigating, and then like you could say, all right, I'm going to start from San Diego, let's say, and it'll tell you the recommended routes from San Diego, when the best time to do them is, what the mileage is, if there are any like stopping points along the way. So that is really, really helpful for planning things, and we have like all of our upcoming passages bookmarked so that we can refer to them quickly. Super, super helpful. We also have Jimmy Cornell's pilot book. World Pilot.
Hang on. We're gonna look this up. Pause. Unpause.
So the book is Jimmy Cornell's Ocean. Dang it, I forgot it. Hang on.
It's Jimmy Cornell's Ocean Atlas.
Cornell's Ocean Atlas.
Which is a pilot charts, basically, based off satellite weather information. So it's really helpful for being able to figure out kind of what the standard weather you might find in different parts of the world at different times of the year.
Yes.
So that, in combination with the world cruising routes, really gives you a good idea of what you can expect going on different routes throughout the world.
Yes. So for the more localized information, there are cruising guides. We found that in the South Pacific, the cruising guides were not very helpful. I'm going to link below to my South Pacific tips and trips. Trips.
I'm just going to let this keep rolling. Keep rolling.
Tips and tricks blog post.
Yeah, that's about it.
Because there are some excellent free resources for cruising in the South Pacific. In the Caribbean, it's not that big of a problem because it's very well traveled.
And there are a lot of really good guidebooks for the Caribbean. I would say the Mediterranean probably has a lot as well, which we haven't been there before. So it's a lot more of the less traveled parts of the world that is a little bit harder to find that information. Yeah,
so the issue in the South Pacific is that not as many boats travel there, and there's a lot of islands. So the free resources that I have listed in the blog post are much better. Noonsite, if you're not familiar with Noonsite, is an excellent compilation of very important stuff like customs and immigration clearance and services for yachties.
Yeah, you're jumping into the next question.
No, I'm not. Noonsite and other blogs.
How do you educate yourself on entry requirements? Noonsight.
Okay then.
That's how you educate yourself. Noonsight is, bar none, you have to be able to like look at Noonsight for going to all these places. For like each individual country we've been to, Noonsight will have what the clearance procedures are, links to like the actual customs and immigration pages, so you can go look at that. Other cruisers will have reports on what they experienced, that sort of stuff. So it's really incredibly helpful and worth checking out, especially for entry requirements. Now I'm going to back us up just a step because someone asked about flags for the new areas traveled. We've done a couple things. We have ordered ones from easily sourced places in the US that we know of to friends who come to visit us. And then also a lot of the chandleries around the world will have flags for various countries that are around them. So it's not that difficult to actually find flags for places you're going.
Yeah, some people even make their flags. Yeah. If you want to go that route, more power to you. We read tons of other blogs, or I at least read tons of other blogs. Vlogging, we don't watch so much, but we are getting to kind of a place where not a lot of vloggers have been.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy for us to get recommendations from blogs just because they aren't really out there.
Yeah. Delos, if you want to hit us up and let us know all about Southeast Asia, that would be great.
Yeah, they're kind of the closest ones, but yeah, it's their older videos.
Yeah.
Next up, places. Your top 3 cruising areas so far is the question from our friend Allison Jack.
Man, there's so many to choose from. That's a tough question. So I'm gonna go with 2 that I think will not be all that surprising and 1 that will be. So I think my absolute top has been the Lao group of Fiji, which I know we're doing those videos now, so you haven't seen all of it, but the Vanuatu was just so stunningly gorgeous. It was absolutely amazing. I think one of the most gorgeous places I've ever been in my entire life. Fulanga was some of the absolute friendliest people we have ever met in our life, plus the fact that it was absolutely gorgeous. So I think the Lao group of Fiji was just way up there for me. And second, I'm going to surprise you and say Nova Scotia, Canada. Those Canadians really have it going, eh? So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S., so Nova Scotia reminded me a lot of that environment, just the absolute beautiful green, lush, like people were so friendly. We got on shore and people were offering us cars to go to the grocery store that we'd never met before in our entire lives, and it was bald eagles flying around. It was absolutely gorgeous, pristine. Plus, there's no catamaran. Well, I shouldn't say there's no. There's so rarely catamarans up there that we were like famous just because we had a catamaran. Like we had people walking down the dock and taking pictures of us, and no one knows who we are up there, so that was kind of cool.
This was like 2 years ago?
Yeah, this is like one of our first cruising stops. So I really enjoyed Nova Scotia. I thought it was a really cool place. Just kind of unusual for people to get up to and see, which was part of the reason I liked it.
Yeah, it's definitely not a lot of cruisers there.
Yeah, and then third, I'm going to say the Tuamotus of French Polynesia. I love those kind of pristine, beautiful white sand beach atolls. Like when I picture South Pacific, like that's what I picture. Just a beautiful palm tree kind of out across the beach. It's just, it's so gorgeous. And the snorkeling there was awesome. So yeah, that one's a tough one to beat.
Yeah. And my answers are exactly the same.
Whoa.
Those were my favorite places.
I wasn't expecting Nova Scotia on that one, but...
No, I really enjoyed it. I thought Halifax was a great little town. Great little city, I'm sorry.
Don't be offending all those poor people up there.
Don't worry. We had a ton of poutine and beaver tails, and it was delicious.
It was so awesome.
And we really enjoyed cruising the Bredor Lakes and going through St. Peter's Lock. And no, I thought it was really fun. The big bummer for me was that it was cold water, and it was foggy, so we didn't really swim all that much, which I really like to swim. But yeah, those are good places. Are you enjoying your time in Australia? Yes.
I haven't been eaten by a crocodile yet, so I'm going to go with yes.
No drop bears either.
No drop. We were in the country for less than 24 hours. Any Americans who come here, you really got to be concerned about those drop bears.
Yeah, they particularly like the taste of American meat.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, boats in general. Besides gunboats, wink. What other similar sized cats do you like and why?
Well,
Hang
I
on,
guess
hang on.
I wore the exact right shirt for today.
No.
So Joe and TJ, I hope you guys watch this and eventually appreciate this.
Yes. How about I answer for you?
Oh, yes. Let's see
Yeah.
what the answer is going to be here.
So, this is a very relevant discussion because...
Not that relevant. We're not buying a new boat or anything.
No, we're not buying... I'll get there.
Okay.
David really likes Shonings.
I do.
And they're made here in Australia. Well, they're designed here in Australia.
Most of them are made here in Australia.
Most of them are made here in Australia. So, we fortunately have gotten to meet the owners of a beautiful 60-foot Shoning...
She's 55, 17 meter.
Kato?
Oh, that's 20 meters.
60 feet, 20 years. I was right. I know what I'm talking about. We met Kato's owners, and Kato. And we got to tour Kato, and she's a gorgeously sexy boat. Actually, we even got to see her come out of the water, which was really cool. We also just met two couples who are building their Shonings here in the Melbourne area. One is building a 17-meter Shoning
Wildfire.
I know, but the type.
Oh, it's a G-Force 1700C.
Thank you. All right. And then...
So in my defense, that was the one I thought she was talking about.
Yes.
My bad.
Okay. And then the third one is a Shoning Wilderness. So that is a 13.5-meter catamaran. And we actually just posted pictures of both those visits because they are in the process builds on our Facebook page. So check out our Facebook page to look at those photos. So Shonings are David's favorite boat. Probably, right?
Yeah, they're just really sexy. I mean, I do like them. So, in general, the other boats that I really like, I do particularly like Outre-Mets. I think they are beautiful boats. They're kind of a nice combination of the speed and cruising combination, which is really nice. But yeah, I mean, those Shonings.
Yeah, I like the Shonings too. It's just the process of getting a Shoning is hard, and yeah. Now that you've been exploring the world on an FP44, would you pick that brand and model again if you choose again? Or maybe something different? Maybe something with dagger boards?
Well, there's a can of worms open everywhere. So I would go back to again and say we are really happy with our Helia. It has been a really, really good boat for getting us around the world in both safety and comfort. So from that aspect of it, I would certainly not be disappointed if we were making the same decision over again and ended up with a Helia. So that's would not be a problem for me at all.
Yeah.
One of the really big things when we were looking at boats was we knew we wanted a cat. We knew we wanted something that was going to be roughly in kind of the mid 40-foot range. I feel that's kind of a good size for ocean crossing, both in terms of load carrying capacity for some of the cruising goodies, but also good waterline length so that you're not doing a ton of hobby horsing. We did go on larger boats than that when we were shopping, but I think especially Amy at the time felt that those boats were just too big, and for two people, handling that would have been, I think, a bit of a test of our skills at that point. Now, with our experience being on the water for much longer, I don't think we would have any problem handling a much larger boat. So what I would say is I really like the living space that we have. I would not mind a longer boat for being able to get that additional speed, but I would say that we would need to have a longer boat to be able to keep up the same sort of relative living space that we have on the 44 in order to get the faster boat with dagger boards, stuff like that. So there would definitely be a trade-off in terms of those sort of things. But I mean, the dagger boards questions, being able to point upwind or sail a little bit faster, that would be nice and have those options. But man, sailing upwind sucks. I don't care if you have dagger boards or not, it's just not that comfortable. So, there's all kinds of options. Like I said, I would not be unhappy if we ended up with the Helia again, but I think we would also expand our search options knowing what we know now if we were to buy something new again.
Yeah. So more specifically, are there any plans to change your boat to another type or larger in the future? So
I'm required to say no.
Yeah. I am very firm that we are going to get as much cruising life as we desire out of Starry Horizons. Because if you bought a new boat, like we own Starry Horizons out, like it doesn't make any sense to get rid of her. Like
No. And the truth of it is, like, I absolutely love seeing these shownings that are here in Australia, but there's no reason. I absolutely love Starry Horizons as well. And she is definitely capable of getting us around the world and going just about anywhere we want to go, since Antarctica's out. No desire to go there. So yeah, there's no real need for us to go for a different type of boat or larger. So we're quite happy with what we have.
And we are committed to finishing our circumnavigation on Starry Horizons.
Yeah.
Yeah. A 44-foot cat seems to have a lot of space where you can get away from your partner. How much larger than 44 feet do you think is a good start? We already kind of covered that a little bit. I mean, I think the 40 to 45, 46 foot range is very comfortable for a couple.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with that for that size range. I mean, it's, you know, performs decently, it handles well in the ocean, like it's certainly capable of crossing oceans, and yeah, can be handled by 2 people. So I think 44 is a really good place to start if you're looking for a cat to cross oceans.
Yeah, that's pretty great. On to miscellaneous questions. Do you run into many other video bloggers? I know you crossed paths with La Vagabond. Are there any others? Well, we actually met Chase Story before they had Cheeky Monkey, because they contacted us that they were looking at the Helia 44, and so we met them originally in Miami before they bought their boat, and then we caught up with them again in the past, or in the future. No, in the past.
I'm pretty sure everything's in the past at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Other channels we've caught up with, Ride the Trades, are our friends Lewis and Alyssa, and they are a charter boat in Fiji, new charter boat in Fiji.
Yeah, they do videos. I wouldn't call them necessarily like quite as frequent video bloggers, but what they do put out is pretty damn awesome. So really like those guys. We have met also Couch Sailors, Jose and Gina. We had read some of their blogs and stuff like that. I think while we were in Florida doing outfitting, and then randomly happened into them in French Polynesia and got a chance to hang out with them through most of the South Pacific, which was awesome.
And I don't know what their video schedule's doing anymore.
You know, it's really tough. Like the South Pacific, there's a lot of like no internet spots, so doing frequent uploads is a bit challenging. So we did meet Brent and Anna from Catamaran Impey when we were in New Caledonia this last year. Had a really good chat with those guys, so that was a lot of fun. And then the other ones would be Ride the Trades. Said that one already. Red Thread, that's what I'm thinking of. Neil and Jesse, who are now here in Australia, but they've got a little ways to catch up on their videos. Not sure if they're ever going to finish that, but I think that's about it.
I think so. I mean, it seems like most vloggers are in the Caribbean.
Yeah, so there's just not a whole lot of people out in the South Pacific right now. So I know Ryan and Elena on a little bit faster boat than us. We're just waiting for them to catch up again. So.
Yeah. Do you foresee when you will not be sailing full time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, cruising is really fun and a fantastic way to see the world, but yeah, it's really hard being away from family and friends for so long. Like, we've been so incredibly fortunate that a lot of our friends and family have come to visit us in various parts around the world, but yeah, it's tough to be gone for so long. So yeah, I think there'll be a time when we go back and live on land again.
Have JOBs. Yeah. I do think that we were surprised transitioning into cruising and seeing how restricted our travel schedule actually is. You know, we have to avoid cyclone season, and we always have to go with the wind and the weather, and so it's not like if we were to fly or backpack around, it would be, you know, we're very restricted actually. So if you were left-handed, what size shoe do you think you'd take to the moon with you? I would take a size 8 because that's the kind of shoe that I wear. So
I would take a size 11 fitty. Just because we're on the moon, I can make it whatever size I want.
Space shoes.
Space shoes
Space
would be
shoes.
awesome.
I like this one. If both of you were captured by hungry savages on an island and became their cannibal food, which one of you would more likely give the natives diarrhea? And the reason I love this question was because this person asked us multiple questions in the same paragraph, and most of them were very topical, but they all, except for this one, were very topical but related questions, and then you just threw this one in at the end.
Well done, sir. Well done.
I feel like we should write our vote down and then like show it at the same time. Like,
All right, we'll do a count of 3 and then a point. How about that?
a point?
Yeah. So
Oh,
point,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you understand the rules of the game?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, ready? On 3. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
You think I would?
I do.
Why?
I have no idea.
Well, you're a spicy redhead. Like, that's gonna be the whole problem right there, and there's no contest.
I don't know.
Yeah, see, I've got
I
a
have
reason
no
for my
logic.
argument. I've got a reason here.
There's gotta be a reason. I'll think of one. I will. There is a reason.
No, I think I win, so.
I don't want to be eaten by cannibals.
Well, I don't think either of us do, but that wasn't the point of the question. Fine. Yeah. Okay, I think this video has gone on long enough. And I think we've answered just about everything. We tried to get all of them, so.
Yeah, it's a long video.
Really long. So if you guys have stuck with us this whole thing, wow, I'm
Hats
amazed.
off, man.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, got at least something out, and then at the very least saw a few different topics and questions you were interested in. But this was a lot of fun. I think we will definitely try to do this again at some point in the future when we're in places we've got internet to upload videos. But thank you guys so much for participating. This was awesome.
Yeah, so when are we publishing this video?
This should be up on Wednesday in the States, Thursday in Australia. Fingers crossed for everything as well.
Okay, so we have a meetup upcoming in Hobart, and one in Bondi in Sydney, and one in Perth. So check our Facebook page for those events. And as usual, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Can we like relax now? Sit back.
Yeah.